Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions on the thing. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. So if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So it's a solo show this week for me, but I'm going to be discussing The Simpsons episode Colonel Homer. This was The Simpsons Season 3, Episode 20, way back in those early days of The Simpsons. It is, however, listed on Disney Plus as Episode 19 of Season 3 because the first episode of that season, aka Stark Raving Dad, is not featured on Disney Plus. It's been pulled from Disney Plus due to the controversy surrounding its uncredited guest star, Michael Jackson, of course. Which is a shame because it's one of the certainly a classic episode. I'm glad I have it on basically DVD that I could still go back and watch if I really wanted to. So why did I pick Colonel Homer? Well, this week I realized it was probably going to be a quick and dirty kind of solo episode kind of show with other team members kind of busy or unavailable. And so I thought I could do... I thought I wanted to try basically a this day in history kind of idea. So I kind of looked at hey, what in the Disney canon or in the Simpsons canon or kind of anywhere else really on the Disney Plus universe, what released on a March 26th in the past? And I kind of landed on a couple potential options. One of them was Doug's first movie, which would have been, I think, is interesting, especially because I don't think I've really sat down and ever watched the Disney Doug stuff. I was really a Nickelodeon Doug fan before it moved to Disney. And I don't know if I ever sat down and really watched anything after it made that move. So that was one option that came out on a March 26th. And then looking at The Simpsons, this episode originally released March 26th, 1992. So I figured, hey, it's one of the iconic, I would say, early season episodes of The Simpsons with Homer going out and becoming a country singer, record manager kind of thing. So I figured, hey, yeah, that'll be a nice, quick and easy one that I can sit down, watch the episode, and then hop in front of the camera and record about it. So yeah, as I said, history lesson for this one, March 26, 1992. So it is, 29 years old? This year, almost on its 30th anniversary. Other notable releases, i.e. other notable things in television around this time that I pulled together. April 6th, so a couple weeks later, Barney and Friends would debut on PBS. Barney the Big Purple Dinosaur, of course, childhood, icon of my childhood and many people's childhood. May 1st, Sesame Street broadcast its 3,000th episode. And this, obviously this is, The Simpsons has gone on to become one of the, longest running TV shows kind of in the conversation. But even The Simpsons right now is only in the 700s. I say only in the 700s, is in the 700s compared to Sesame Street back then being on its 33,000th episode. Impressive. Johnny Carson retired from the Tonight Show, and Jay Leno took over on May 22nd/25th. May 30th, the final Hee Haw aired in syndication, and Yahoo, which is kind of the country bumpkin kind of comedy show that exists within this episode, obviously is a direct reference to the series Hee Haw. I didn't realize it had run that late, and also that was a little bit of trivia on in what I found, but then there are on IMDb a couple of random episodes that would go on, and one in 1996 and one in 1997. I don't know if those are one-off specials or something like that, but the series as a whole kind of wrapped up in 1992, which again was running way later than I thought it had. That always has struck me as a show that would have ended in the 60s or 70s, well before my time. And then the last one I pulled in here, June 10th of 1992, brought us the first ever MTV Movie Awards, which again seems like a like it seems almost the inverse. Like it seems like that is something that would have been going on since the 80s or something, in the heyday of MTV. But the fact that, the MTV Movie Awards started when I was, let's see, I'd be 7 years old. Okay, that's interesting. Has a runtime, of course, like pretty much all Simpsons episodes do, of 23 minutes. Of this era, 23 minutes. Certainly later eras have shrunk down a little bit as more time was cut out of the shows in favor of advertising. But in this era, it was the 23-minute standard. In the Simpsons timeline of episodes, this occurs between the episodes Dog of Death, where Santa's little helper runs away and becomes a Burns attack dog, and Black Widower is the episode that follows this immediately after, which is the return of Sideshow Bob, where he tries to marry and kill Aunt Selma as, a form of revenge on Bart, having had their, run-in, I think, the previous season. The roll call here, a lot of this, if you caught the episode I did back around Thanksgiving, that was Bart versus Thanksgiving, some of this is going to be kind of familiar territory in terms of like the cast and stuff, but director here was Mark Kirkland, who has directed 84 episodes of The Simpsons, starting all the way back in 1990 with Dancin' Homer, and has continued to work with them all the way up through 2020's Hail to the Teeth. So, shout out to him, just continually working with them over all these, 31 years, 32 years, I think I think they're in their 32nd season now. The writer for this episode was the one and only Matt Groening, who, of course, was the creator of The Simpsons, which is currently listed on his IMDb at 707 episodes on there. Futurama, of course, he also was a co-creator of 140 episodes of that. And the Netflix show that I've never actually sat down and watched, Disenchantment, but, very much clearly has his, like, iconic animation style, is 40 episodes and counting of that show. I say he wrote this one, and one of the little bits of trivia is that this is the only episode solely written by Matt Groening of the series. Like that blew my mind that like he had only ever written this episode. Obviously, he's creator of the series, and involved in, I'm sure, all of the season story pitch meetings and all that stuff. But the fact that like this is the only episode that he's credited as the sole writer on was really just surprised me. Also surprised me in terms of like the context of the story versus, the wider Simpsons. Like the fact that this is a very kind of adult themed story, grappling with, Homer's potential infidelity and stuff like that. It certainly seems like a kind of a departure from the more zaniness that you would kind of see in that era. Starring, of course, Dan Castellaneta as Homer, who is, as of this recording, credited in 704 episodes. So I don't know if there's like a discrepancy between his episodes and the episodes that Groening is committed is tagged in, but whatever. Julie Kavner playing Marge, of course, 703 episodes. Nancy Cartwright as Bart, also 704 episodes. Yeardley Smith as Lisa in 702 episodes. Hank Azaria, who was not in Bart versus Thanksgiving. He had not joined the show as a series regular at that point. So he was not in the last episode that I discussed this on. But he plays Moe, as well as a handful of other characters in this, is in 692 episodes of the series. Also known for The Birdcage and Mystery Men, a couple of big iconic film roles that I remember seeing him in. Also, he was in a TV show, I don't know, 10 years ago now or something like that, I think called Huff, maybe, where I want to say he was like a private detective or something. I don't remember. I remember seeing it being like, oh, Hank Azaria's in that. Okay, cool. My closest little like almost run-in with Hank Azaria was he was in the original Broadway cast of Spamalot, but I believe by the time I saw Spamalot in what would that have been, 2005, he had already moved on, and so I ended up seeing Alan Tudyk in the role of Lancelot and others by that time. So that was another Hank Azaria, iconic role, I would say. I think he got nominated for a Tony for that, probably. alongside, his kind of co-stars. David Hyde Pierce was in there as Galahad, and I believe Tim Curry played King Arthur, and like that track of roles. Anyway, Harry Shearer is in here as Lenny and others. 704 episodes as well. And the big guest star on this episode was Beverly D'Angelo in here as Lurleen Lumpkin. And she is, of course, best known probably as Ellen Griswold from the National Lampoon Vacation movies with Chevy Chase. A little bit of trivia here. Bart's chalkboard message is, "I will not conduct my own fire drills." And the sofa gag is everybody sitting on the couch, and then like they basically fall into the couch with their legs up over their heads. As I said, this is the only episode of the series written solely by Matt Groening. And on that, Matt Groening said he always wanted to write an episode in which Homer is offered a chance at being rich and famous, other than being with his family, but then chooses his family over glamour at the end. He pitched the ideas to the writers of the show, who suggested the parody of Coal Miner's Daughter from 1980, and also that Homer should become the manager for a country singer. Kind of echoing that, Beverly D'Angelo first met Matt Groening at a party at Frank Zappa's house and was called in to audition for Lurleen based on her performance as Patsy Cline in Coal Miner's Daughter. She got the role after completing a singing test. And this was pretty cool. Beverly D'Angelo, one of the little trivia things is basically like, unlike other guest stars, she hung out at like the writing session and kind of pitched jokes and stuff like that. And she wrote 2 of the songs for the episode. Your Wife Don't Understand You, which Lurleen sings at the Beer and Brawl, where Homer hears her for the first time, and I Bagged a Homer. So I would argue like a couple of her most iconic songs were written by Beverly D'Angelo. She wrote both songs in an hour and presented them to Matt Groening at the episode's table read. So that was a just cool little trivia bit there. And then the title is a reference to Elvis Presley's manager, Tom Parker, who was known as Colonel Tom Parker or simply the Colonel. So that's where you get kind of the Homer all decked out in white look from. So in terms of how does this hold up, what did I think and what are some of my favorite moments? I thought it held up more or less okay. I think, especially like in the 2021 lens, like Homer there's a mixture of like him being so oblivious that he does come across as cruel, but it definitely feels like the writers were trying to pen him more as oblivious and not cruel. But even the opening bit of the family going to the movies and stuff, and him just being the epitome of the kind of moviegoer that Alamo Drafthouse would gladly kick out of, him talking and then like spoiling the movie and all that kind of stuff. There's no redeeming part of that. He's just a jerk in that section. And then kind of, and then he acts all indignant when he gets called out for being a jerk. And so it's like that's not a great look, really. That's clearly like the writers kind of being like, well, he's the star of our story, so we got to make him pseudo sympathetic. So he's gonna pout basically. It's like, but he has no right to pout. He was an asshole. So that's a little like jarring. And then even that kind of carries over into the whole plot with Lurleen, and it like even reading that trivia bit about this being a story where Homer is given the opportunity to choose like a rich and famous lifestyle over his family, like that doesn't, obviously that is, at the core of what's going on here, but like I don't think enough weight is put on the fact that if Lurleen is a success, she will become rich and famous, and therefore Homer will become rich and famous. Since like the pinnacle of the stuff we see is her going on some kind of variety show, which certainly would be a great big break, but like that's nowhere near like, Taylor Swift levels of like superstardom kind of thing, or, around this time, I don't know, Shania Twain or Reba McEntire kind of like, superstardom. So I never see that as like the battle that is for Homer Soul right here. It just seems like this woman who is obviously flirting with him, and he's too oblivious to understand that, fine, but like clearly Marge is upset about this, and the fact that he doesn't see that either is I would say problematic. Um, so that's like a little jarring. And again, if this were written today, I would probably really try and, or like if I were, around the writers room or something like that, I'd try and really hammer home let's like let's try and make Lurleen a bigger deal than this laugh-in show. Like the record exec, that comes in, like give him, like, put a dollar sign to that really, shows that Homer is having to grapple with, like, oh, I could be rich, or I've got to go be with my family. So that's kind of, I think, my overall takes on the episode. It's still, it is certainly an episode that I think grapples more with, like, the heart of the Homer and Marge dynamic, than, a lot of other episodes, especially the ones that, just get into, wacky family hijinks and stuff like that. But yeah. So some of my favorite moments and scenes that stood out, like I said, I don't know if it's my favorite or least favorite, but Homer being the epitome of, like, oh man, the Alamo Drafthouse. Like, this episode made me miss the Alamo Drafthouse so much. Obviously, I'm a year into quarantine, haven't been back to Alamo since, God, the last movies I saw in theaters were probably like Emma and Onward last year. I think were the last two I saw at Alamo. And I don't remember which one was the last one I saw. And it just makes me wish that I could go back and not have to deal with people like Homer in in the audience there. I did appreciate when we cut away to Bart and Lisa. Bart having the line, because they're seeing, like, obviously, like, a very violent film, and Lisa's very, kind of covering her eyes and stuff. And I appreciated, even then, Bart having the line, "If you don't watch the violence, you'll never get desensitized to it," because obviously that's, the pinnacle of kind of commentary on American cinema, the overabundance of violence in movies, that we have become super desensitized to. This actually came up on, I was watching some stuff on YouTube, and one of the auto suggestions, and I just kind of let it play, was Conan O'Brien sitting around with a bunch of writers from The Simpsons, and they talked about this joke. And so when it came up in this episode, I laughed. But it is the joke, "Hey, you, let's fight. Them's fighting words." I think they attributed that to John Swartzwelder, iconic kind of writer of The Simpsons, and very eclectic writer of The Simpsons, having. They talked about him, really being able to tap into those, like, classic comedy lines like that. And he's like, how is that a line that had never existed before? Was "let's fight. Them's fighting words." It was a great little back and forth there in the Redneck Bar. I also appreciated the introduction of Fudd as kind of like the bizarro world Duff, that Homer is encountering, here 100+ miles outside of Springfield. And then I also, it's one of those subtle background gags, but I'm sure it was also written into the script. Like, no tornadoes since 14 days or whatever, and then later on when we come back to the trailer park, it's down to 2 days. So clearly something crazy happened in the beginning of Lurleen's rise to stardom. So yeah, I think, like, overall, my least favorite element is probably that, like, Homer doesn't really suffer any consequences for his actions in this. And again, that's certainly a recurring theme of The Simpsons, is that, like, Homer gets off scot-free. But not only is it the, like, he was kind of, like, stepping out on Marge, and admittedly, again, not really, but, like, just so oblivious to it. But also that he like ties up the family, finances and everything, and really only gets a $50 payoff from the like record exec at the end. So it's like, well, yep, they're just the eternally poor Simpsons. I did this last time around, so I tried to keep an eye out for it this time as well. I kind of created a segment of the jokes that I definitely didn't appreciate at the time when I would have watched this, ad nauseum growing up. And one of them that caught my eye was, again, it's a visual gag, but when Lurleen is going in and actually, like, recording in the record studio with, like, the band around her, they all have, that kind of, like, smoky, like everybody's got cigarettes as they're performing, and I didn't catch that the bass player's is just in like the head of or the neck of his bass. It just has a cigarette just kind of sitting in there. I appreciated that. I also appreciated, and I probably like I might have gotten this at the time, but it certainly stands out nowadays. The starring in alphabetical order, and then you like immediately start off with like Yodelin Zeke, and then go through all. It's just kind of like a roller coaster of alphabetical names. And I also appreciated that I don't think I caught growing up the return of Yodeling Zeke, who kind of got beat up at the bar earlier, and he's even got like the bandage over his head here. So I didn't realize like he was a crossover star. He was slumming it in that redneck bar, but really his gig is on Hee Haw or Yahoo. And then I also really appreciated the record executive kind of saying like, I'm from Rebel Yell Records, a division of Tokusaki Corporation. Like the idea that the big country label is probably a subsidiary of like some Japanese Sony-like corporation or something that would have no actual like stake on country music. Is certainly something that I think it finds a new light in an era where I've heard the Bo Burnham song that's just like parodying, country music. And when pickup trucks and drinking beers and have my dog in the seat or something have become like such stereotypical staples that are like, let's just kind of write a country song by committee. It's from companies like the Tokusaki Corporation. So yeah, I appreciated that. In terms of the report card, what would I give this episode? I think because it's a little heavier on the like the serious side of things, and I didn't really feel like it was like it definitely has some great like jokes and back and forth, but I felt like it was a little lacking on the comedy in favor of trying to tell a more serious story between Homer and Marge here. So I think ultimately I'd give this one like a B probably. Yeah, not like it's certainly still a good episode, maybe great even, but certainly like I feel like when I went in to watch this, I was expecting more humor and more laughs out of it than I got. Just given like how vividly I remembered the character of Lurleen growing up and stuff like that. But again, shout out to Beverly D'Angelo for coming in, writing her own songs for the character, and them just being like catchy little bops. I remember growing up, I had a lot of like the Simpsons CDs that were just like collections of the music from the Simpsons, and I'm sure all of those songs were on those various albums. So very cool there. A little bit of extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. This is going to be the same list as last time I did the Simpsons episode, but it is the Simpsons movie. It is Playdate with Destiny, which was one of the Simpsons shorts, as well as The Longest Daycare, DuckTales, Big City Greens, Gravity Falls, Star versus the Forces of Evil, and Big Hero 6. Extracurriculars. What else have I been watching on Disney Plus? Obviously, The Falcon and Winter Soldier came out last week, and episode 2 is out. The day that this episode goes live, you're watching that series along. I'm really enjoying that. I love how strong of Captain America Winter Soldier's vibes that first episode gave me, but at the same time, like knowing the political thriller nature of that kind of film, like I was sitting through the first episode very much like stressing out about it. It was almost a show that I was like, I wish I could go and see like a recap and just read through, because I will do this sometimes where I'm like, I don't want to be like shocked and surprised by like a character suddenly dying or being beat up or something like that. So I kind of wanted to I was just kind of constantly like anxious about that, and so sometimes I will go out of my way to spoil myself on shows to avoid that feeling of anxiousness. So I know what's coming, so I'm not hanging on every word waiting for the other shoe to drop or something like that. So it was almost like I kind of want to just like wait and let Twitter almost spoil the show for me, but I think I'll push through with that. And obviously, I'm recording this, here on Thursday night. I will be sitting down in a few hours' time and watching episode 2. So, incredibly, it was incredible opening action sequence. I'm sure we will do at least one episode of that D Plus show on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, if not multiple. This one's only a 6-episode run compared to WandaVision's 9, so might not make sense to do like hey, let's check in halfway through like I did with WandaVision, but we'll see. Anyway, I think that's pretty much the only thing I've been watching on Disney Plus. The only other thing I've been watching. Yeah. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you for joining me to talk about The Simpsons Season 3 episode Colonel Homer. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. You can follow all of the stuff we do over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com, where we post our podcasts Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then we also have Let's Plays that go up on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thatnerdysite, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I've been having some fun playing stuff like Hitman. I played through the Avengers new DLC this last week. I believe the plan for next week and potentially the foreseeable future is Logan and I are going to try and sit down and play the new It Takes Two game by Joseph Ferris from Hazelight Studios, I believe. The basically co-op, like husband and wife are turned into like little puppet figures, animated figures or something like that. Anyway, Logan and I believe we're going to try and sit down and play through some of that this weekend, which I will try and record as our Let's Plays for a couple sessions coming up. So keep an eye out for that in the future. Yeah, that's going to do it. If you liked what you heard, once again, please like, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube, all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. We'd love it if you do. It helps keep the lights on, helps pay the Libsyn bills for keeping these podcast feeds going. Thank you for joining me. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.